whatever approach I choose to take at any given time, whether I'm writing about this topic or speaking about it, I always like to begin by asking what it is that we even mean when we invoke this phrase, the rule of law. And the reason I like to begin by asking that question is because there's this sort of paradox in our political discourse that the most frequently invoked political phrases are often the most ill-defined. I think terrorism is probably the leading example of that, a term that is continuously invoked to justify a wide array of often contradictory perspectives and policies, yet you would be very hard-pressed to find somebody who can articulate a clear, cogent, and consistently applied definition of that term. I think the same is true for this phrase, the rule of law. It almost has ascended to this sort of hackneyed, empty slogan status. It's a term that constantly gets tossed around by all sorts of people to justify any number of things, but it's not really something that's ever discussed or debated in terms of what it is that it denotes. Nobody ever stands up and says, I just want you to know that my position with regards to the rule of law is that I am against it or I oppose it. It doesn't get discussed in that way. It's just a slogan that gets tossed around, though it does have a real meaning, and I think it's worth spending a little bit of time, if we're going to talk about it, thinking about what that meaning is. And usually when that term is invoked, the rule of law, what immediately enters the brain and the thought process is the famous proclamation by John Adams of the Massachusetts Constitution when he wrote, what we are creating is a nation of law, not of men. And this too has sort of a cliched tone to it now. It doesn't really immediately impart any real meaning, but it actually is a very profound observation if you stop and think about it. And the reason that it's a profound observation is because what it's really positing is that there are only two possibilities when you're constructing and maintaining a society. Not 3 or 4 or 5 possibilities, really only 2. You can either be a nation of men, as he called it, which really means nothing more than there will be varying degrees of power exercised and possessed by different individuals, different factions of the society, and whoever wields the most power will simply have their will prevail. They will simply reign supreme. That is a nation of men. Those with the greatest power will dominate and be able to impose their will without constraint. The alternative, and they were searching for an alternative since that essentially was what they were waging a war to liberate themselves from, was not all that easy to devise. What is the alternative to a society in which those with the greatest power can assert their will? And the rule of law really is intended to be the answer to that question, and ultimately it really is the only answer to that question, because in order to find an alternative to a nation of men, you need to have something superior to even those who wield the greatest power, something to which even the most powerful people in the society or the most powerful factions are subordinate. And the rule of law is really the only answer for what can be that alternative, and the rule of law is a pretty ultimately simple concept, even though it's incredibly significant, and all it really means is that we are all in the society bound by a common set of rules on equal terms, regardless of power, position, and prestige. That's all the rule of law really means, and the reason why it's the alternative to a nation of men is because no matter how much power you have, you're still subjected to this set of rules on the same terms as everybody else, including those who wield no power.
Has maintained and built the world's largest penal state, where more people are imprisoned in our nation's prison system than any other country in the world, including countries with far greater populations.
And for gross human rights abuses. Bradley Manning has already served 4 years in prison, and he is being threatened with a 20-year sentence or even life imprisonment.